Luigi's Mansion is now a 20-year-old game that I am very fond of. Luigi's Mansion ROM hacks, on the other hand, are a very new thing. Like I said before, it lacks the clout of something like Mario 64 and Zelda Ocarina of Time, so it doesn't get as much attention from ROM hackers. But hopefully that's gonna start changing. The two I talked about last week are two out of some single-digit number that I don't even know, but I'm pretty sure it's still only in the single digits for now. Today I got a new one, Luigi's Final Ghost Hunt. This was teased back at F3 2021 and is now finished. The only reason it took me this long to beat it is because, and I really hate to admit it, but it was hard to find. Somehow typing Luigi's Final Ghost Hunt into YouTube did not bring up the release video. But after a bit of digging, I finally found it, and I'm gonna link it below as usual. But the other reason it took me so long is because, and this is even more embarrassing, I got stuck on it for a few days and I totally couldn't figure out what to do. I ended up looking it up, which didn't actually help because nobody has a playthrough of it yet, but I finally figured it out the other day, so now it's all water under the spooky bridge. And I'm still in a spooky phase, so yeah. Here we go. Final Ghost Hunt follows Luigi many years after the events of Luigi's Mansion. He's gotten super old and his hair is now gray. He also has a son named Enzo. I don't know if that's a reference to something, but it's a fun fact, I guess. Toad is now an old man, becoming the new Toadsworth, and is also an alcoholic. Egad is dead, but has appeared to have mastered his new ethereal form, along with a new improved ghost vacuum. Boos have once again taken over the mansion, putting Luigi's retirement on hold, so now he has to get rid of them all once again. Also, spoiler alert, at some point you split the Dark Moon and have to run around the mansion finding pieces to reassemble it, which was pretty cool, so you know what they say, no rest for the weegee. The first thing I noticed about this hack is that it is a lot longer than the other hacks I played so far. This is pretty much a full-sized ROM hack with almost as much gameplay value as the original game, although its runtime was ultimately shorter thanks to some very efficient pacing. The entire mansion is accessible in this hack, but the sequence of events has also been dramatically rearranged so that it's not just a beat-for-beat retread of the game we've already played, but with a slightly different context. In a weird way, it almost feels like the Master Quest version of Luigi's Mansion. It's rearranged enough to the point that it feels new. The presentation has been altered in many subtle and not so subtle ways. The mansion's woodwork appears to be heavily refurnished. Luigi's clothes are now more faded. His flashlight is now purple, which is actually really cool. And also you got the Game Boy Horror in the corner, which doubles as a first-person view, which is a really cool unused feature from the base game that can actually be activated using action replay codes. So if you want to try that out, be my guest. Final Ghost Hunt also features a lot of enemy and ghost designs that weren't in the original game, many of which I imagine are borrowed from later Luigi's Mansion titles. For instance, I think this person is supposed to be Helen Gravely from Luigi's Mansion 3. Then you got Chauncey, who's been replaced with a Luigi doll that throws more Luigi dolls at you, and it's honestly probably scarier than the giant baby. Some of the ghosts in this game are absolutely bonkers, dude. Not only can they slap you around for a lot of health, but some of them also have a ridiculous amount of HP. The upside to this is that the vacuum now has more stopping power, as it does in the New Game Plus of the original game. There's a quiz section that asks you 3 questions about each of the Luigi's Mansion titles, and according to the game, Luigi's Mansion 1 actually has a 2-player mode, which I was pretty sure it didn't, so I don't know what's up with that. The game's either trolling me, or there's a secret 2-player mode that I somehow missed for 20 straight years. I don't know which is worse. Speaking of trolling, this game also has this weird thing where the collision data corresponds to the geometry of the original game and not to the actual geometry of the hack, which I felt like pointing out, because Luigi's Mansion Extra Tangy also had the exact same thing, which leads me to believe this is some limitation with the current modding tools, or just a quirky little thing that hasn't quite been figured out yet. Remember, weegee hacks are still very new. They managed to put the Dark Moon theme song in here and it sounds really cool in this sound font. The ghost catching theme has been replaced by the one you hear in Luigi's Mansion 2. And the Dark Halls theme has been replaced by a rendition of the Lavender Town theme from Pokemon Gen 1. It's especially freaky when you start losing health and it starts playing more and more slowly. Now that's some creepypasta shit right there. Speaking of creepypasta, get a load of this. It's Luigi.exe. For a hack that is often very comical and funny, the scary parts are surprisingly effective, but the comedic undertones cannot be overstated. They got TVs and games all over the place, you got all these framed pictures of memes from 2015, there's a day-old pizza on the ground. It's almost as though either Luigi or the Boos are just really dirty, messy college kids who are too busy playing games and browsing Reddit when they should be studying. These two separate thematic roads, swapping between each other at certain intervals, somehow complement each other very well and bolster each other's effectiveness, which is a pretty cool thing because that same thing was one of the strengths of the original game. The gameplay is largely the same as the original game, which is to be expected, but there are some neat flourishes like this upgrade store that gives you things in exchange for your health. Literally, it takes your health away as currency. If I had to complain about anything, it would probably be the difficulty. Overall, it's completely fine, except for some occasional spikes that really fly out of left field. I mean, are you seeing this right now? This is insanity. And this is just one of like 6 waves. There are also weird things like how certain doors don't work properly and the only way to go through them is to press A when you're in a specific spot half a foot-ish away from them. There are wonky parts here and there, but when all is said and done, all of these issues are entirely forgivable on the grounds that Luigi's Mansion hacks are still in their infancy. And on the other hand, one thing I really appreciated was the pacing. Unlike the original game where you have to keep getting sent back to the lab every other second, the game just keeps on chugging whenever you beat a boss, so there aren't any real interruptions. Even though the order of operations is not the same as the original game, progression is very intuitive and straightforward, so you're not going to get stuck unless you're like me and you forgot you could use the camera to see ghosts sometimes. Considering we are still in the very early stages of Luigi's Mansion ROM hacks, this is a very impressive effort. We have a new story, a rearranged mansion, we got some new assets and enemies, it's got some funnies, it's got some spookies, it's got some booze, but not that kind of booze. It's a fun and detailed love letter to a game that I feel like deserves more love than it currently gets, and aside from being a nice hack, it deserves a gold star just for that. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this one. So thank you for dropping by, and good night.